I've been on this page from day one about how it is the voters within the Democratic Party who are the problem, and that is why it is useless to try and run a Democratic primary campaign or try to take over the Democratic Party. So now that Marianne Williamson has announced her challenge to Joe Biden, certain factions of this sort of PMC clique that I have been talking about and sort of describing very accurately, I might add, as the main barrier to progress within the Democratic Party, have been voicing their opposition to Marianne's candidacy. Here's a video that went semi-viral, and I was very relieved because this makes my point for me. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but you'll get the point very, very quickly.
Democrats, can we please stop talking about primarying Joe Biden? Who should run against Joe Biden? Will Democrats get behind Joe Biden? This many Democrats want an alternative to Joe Biden. Can we just not? The absolute last thing democracy needs right now is a Democratic primary.
The absolute last thing democracy needs right now
look at the crazy democracy.
Eyes. Yeah, the absolute last thing we need now is to actually practice the thing that we supposedly care so much about. It's the last thing we need.
Capitalism with a corrupt Supreme Court on a knife's edge between autocracy and democracy, and people want to spend $100 million to undermine our successful incumbent when the alternative is the twice impeached criminal ex-president or the man who is single-handedly turning Florida into a fascist dictatorship.
Okay, that's it. I rest my case. We do not have to play anymore. You know everything that this idiot is going to say. Here's my point, folks. Here's my point. And this makes it to the point where I don't feel like I have to keep making this point as long as I can have this segment to show people, okay? People like this, with buttoned shirts like this, with refrigerators like this, with kitchens like this, are never going to vote for a populist progressive candidate in the numbers you would need them to in order to win a Democratic primary. That's why this whole premise is a joke. Well, we need a challenge from the left to Biden because we need to put these ideas out there. We need to make the progressive case. Okay, make the progressive case all you want. The question is, in a primary, to whom are you making that case? You're making that case to people like this. These people, I'm sorry, they are not persuadable. They are not reachable. We talked about the Sanders campaign in our chat just a few moments ago. The Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign was obviously one that took place within the Democratic Party, and it was one that had to play by Democratic Party rules because the Sanders to Trump voters, the real populists in his base, they switched to Trump in 2016. So they were Trumpers this time around.
Right.
They were not available to him this time around.
Right.
In order to win the nomination, he had to convince people like this woman to vote for him. You cannot win a Democratic primary without getting enough people like this to vote for you. Not all, not necessarily even most, but you need a considerable percentage of people making these kinds of arguments in these kinds of houses, in these kinds of kitchens with the rotten bananas it looks like above the refrigerator. I don't know why they're there, but anyway, you need them to pull the lever for you. So for all my frustrations, for all of a lot of people's frustrations about the Bernie campaign of 2020, he was running a campaign that had to win a certain amount of these types of voters, which is why he did not go after Joe Biden that hard. He didn't go negative on the other candidates in the race. I know a lot of people in our space were very, very frustrated by that. He did not challenge the Russiagate narrative, which I know a lot of people were very, very frustrated by that. He did not challenge the impeachment narrative. I know a lot of people were very angry about that. The reason he couldn't do any of those things is because he knew that he could not win if he alienated all of these kinds of voters like the person who was on the screen right here. And I know that that was frustrating. And I know that in retrospect, you can say, well, obviously his strategy of appeasing these voters did not work. And that's true. But I would maintain it's the only strategy that had any chance at working. Because if you alienate all of these voters, you can't win in the primary. And so his theory of the case was, I'll get as far as I can without them. I'll get to my 30, 35%, young people, progressives, maybe some of the populists who didn't switch to Trump. I'll get that 30, 35 points in the polls. I'll use that to win the first 3 states, after which people like this will begrudgingly vote for me in enough numbers to get me to 50. Maybe not most of them will vote for me, but enough of them will bend the knee because I'll have the momentum, and we can't have a prolonged primary because that helps Trump. And so I don't like that it's Bernie, but if I can get even 20% of people like this to surrender and vote for me after winning the first 3 states, I can get to 50. That I maintain, while it was obviously not a winning strategy, that was the most practical path to the nomination because you can't win if you turn these people off. Now, it turns out, once the signal came down from on high, Barack Obama, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, they all said vote for Biden. What happened? He didn't get any of these types of voters.
Joe's the one who can win.
They all went to Joe Biden. And the reason I made a point to tell this story is because that is when I knew for sure that the Democratic Party was a dead end. Not because of Barack Obama or Amy Klobuchar or Pete Buttigieg, but because of the psychic power they have over dipshits like this. Yep. And so when you are arguing for an inside the Democratic Party strategy, your problem is not the DNC or Obama or the higher-ups. Your problem is voters like this. This is your problem right here. That's why I left her on the screen for as long as I did. Now I will mercifully remove her from the screen. But that is the issue. That is the issue. That is why you talk about, is Marianne out to sell books? Is Marianne good on this issue or bad on this issue? Or what's her motivation? Or can she be moved? It does not matter. It does not matter. Whatever case you are generating in your head for Marianne Williamson has to appeal to that voter I just told you. And that's not happening. It cannot happen. It will not happen. That's what the 2020 Bernie campaign was. That the whole point of that campaign is we're going to see if we can break through to this crowd. We knew it was a long shot, but we knew it was the only shot we had to implement the kinds of changes, or at least fast track the kinds of policy changes that we wanted to see realized in the short term. And once that failed, it was completely obvious to me at that point. It was obvious to me before that point, but it was the best shot we had. Completely obvious past that point that it was a dead end. And so there you go. I just had to get that out of my system. Thanks for indulging me.
That is a well-deserved victory lap, and you're right. This woman is really the avatar of all the Democrats. Because think about Democrats that you know. Aren't they kind of mostly like this?
They're like this. Here, the sound's off. You can keep talking.
Yeah, she's a particularly animated, probably graduated from a theater program version of that. But she's that. Look, she's even got the crazy eyes. They all of these have the crazy eyes. Like the one who was going to head the Department of Disinformation, Julie Andrews over there. She had the crazy eyes. They all have exactly. they all have the crazy eyes. This is it. When you talk to libs, this is what they all sound like. I mean, she's particularly infuriating, but they all sound like this. They all think like this. So yeah, I mean, that's it. And that was really my final revelation too. That in the end, if Barack Obama and people like him have a veto over your political project, well, there's no point to starting even within that party. And the reason they have a veto is because of voters like this. This fucking moron. Have you looked at an opinion poll? Have you looked at an opinion poll? Our successful incumbent? What are you talking about? It's not like she's not even informed. And none of them really are, because they only listen to certain propaganda stations and only read certain propaganda outlets. So, but that, I don't know how you don't know that Biden is an unpopular president with a historically unpopular VP. How do you not know that? What are you talking about? Successful how? I don't think you played this part. She also says he's accomplished more than any other president in his first 2 years. What are you talking about?
He's for workers' rights.
Have you ever heard of LBJ? Have you heard of LBJ? Have you heard of the Voting Rights Act? Have you? Like, what are you talking about? Medicare?
No, look. She also talked about Joe Biden's record on workers' rights, as if his signature interaction with labor unions has not been to break up a strike. Like, it's just it's from outer space. It's just so ignorant, so uninformed. But
and Ukraine. Oh, that was the best.
Oh yeah. No, look, it's par for the course with these people.
I'm glad that we have a president who had the foreign policy experience to bring together a coalition to stand against Russia and Ukraine. You maniac.
This is what you're dealing with. And the reason why you put it on the voters, because a lot of people are still, I know, going to give me the pushback. Well, they're propagandized. We have to dismantle the propaganda. Every party wishes they could control their voters this way. The Republicans try to control their voters this way. We opened the show tonight. Second main segment was Ron DeSantis pivoting on Ukraine. That's a lesson right there. DeSantis knew he couldn't win the Republican primary unless he bent to the voters' will. The voters demanded an anti-interventionist candidate. His neocon bullshit was not going to fly in a Republican primary. So what did he do? He changed his position to serve and meet the voters where they were. Democrats never do that. Democrats simply tell their base what they can and cannot do for them. And then they deliver on 10% of what they say they can do for them and say, well, we tried for the other 90%, but, the parliamentarian, the Republicans, the Supreme Court, this, that, and the other, right? There's a completely different relationship between the party and its voters in GOP circles and in Democrat circles. Right?
Well, the Democrats are a party of hall monitors.
Exactly.
They're a party of Tracy Flicks.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Please clap.